हेलो एवरीवन, गुड मॉर्निंग टू ऑल ऑफ यू। डिस्कस करते हैं द हिंदू एडिटोरियल एनालिसिस। इससे हमें हर रोज़ न्यू वर्ड्स मिलते हैं तो वोकाबुलरी को इम्प्रूव कर सकते हैं। ग्रामर रूल्स जिस तरह हम लर्न करते हैं और सेंटेंस में कैसे अप्लाई करना है वो सीखते हैं। ट्रेंडिंग न्यूज़ एंड रीडिंग स्किल्स को भी अपग्रेड कर सकते हैं। तो चलिए स्टार्ट करते हैं। फर्स्ट है वी वेयर all just in way. We were all just in way. A standing in Ireland sheds new light on the long, slow, ice-cold life of a deep-sea shark. A standing in Ireland sheds new light on the long, slow, ice-cold life of a deep-sea shark. Ocean's dead often wash up on the storm-battered west coast of Ireland, but in April 2026 यहाँ पे मंथ प्लस ईयर है, मंथ प्लस ईयर, तब हम प्रीपोजिशन इन लगाते हैं। In April 2026, a group of researchers and volunteers stood on the cloudy shoreline of countries Sligo, Ireland, and marveled at the sight of a species that had never been stranded here before. A dead Greenland shark. Judging by its size, around 3 m, means 10 feet long, the grey-being animal lying on the tidal flats was over 150 years old. 150 years. It would have been born in the age of Queen Victoria. It would have been born in the age of Queen Victoria and US President Abraham Lincoln, when three-mast sailing ships crossed the seas and the car hadn't yet been invented. Next. By Greenland shark strands, that's pretty young. It's such a pity. This guy 150 years to get to the point where he could have reproduced. Could have contributed to get the population on track and may not have had the chance, says Emily de Luz, a marine biologist at the Irish Well. The Greenland, the longest living vertebrate on the planet, can live for around 400 years. As some of the ones swimming around today may have been contemporaries of Shakespeare. Though the exact length of lifespan is still subject to debate, with estimates ranging from roughly 300 to 500 years. Next. We were all just in way, says De Luz. It's so mind-boggling. It's so mind-boggling to think how long that animal lived and what it might have seen. While sad for the species and the shark, the stranding and the necropsy that followed were an opportunity to shine some light on a species shrouded in mystery. Next. There is something very intimate. There is something very intimate about working with dead animals because you really get to know the species, says Jasmine Stebno. Jerry Malam, a PhD researcher in marine ecology at University College Cork in Ireland, who took part on the necropsy of the shark. Dead animals can tell us a lot about the living ones. The first challenge was getting the shark to a lab. Greenland sharks are among the world's biggest sharks. Measuring up to 5 m, means 16 feet. This one weigh over 200 kg. The group on the shore covered the body with seaweed to prevent seagulls and other animals from pecking at it. The next day, in a recovery operation overseen by the National Museum of Ireland, a crane hoisted it onto the back of the lorry and took it to a regional lab. Next. A day later, protected by marks. A day later, protected by masks, gloves, and overalls, a group of researchers from a range of organizations and institutions, including the museum, started examining the shark in a well ventilated space. When it's an animal that could be a few hundred years old, there could be anything in that animal. So, for health and safety, you want to be sure you follow good routines, say Steph now, Jeremal. If it's an animal that's lived for that long, bacteria or viruses from very long ago could be within that body. And then suddenly get exposed through the necropsy, she explains. It's important to be mindful that we don't know why this animal died and which potential disease it could have within it. Next. When it comes to Greenland sharks, researchers are still trying to answer a vast range of questions. From how these animals manage to live from such an extraordinarily long time to basic facts around their existence, Greenland sharks are slow swimming, solitary scavengers, and predators. They feed on carcasses but are also known to catch prey such as seals and have even been observed hovering their prey. Powerful suction allows them to suck prey into their mouths, swallowing it whole. Next. Greenland sharks are very slow swimmers, so they are mostly thought of as scavengers that feed off carcasses. but sometimes they seem to opportunistically manage to catch live fast swimming prey like seals, says Lily, a postdoctoral researcher in evolutionary biology at the University of Basel in Switzerland. Since Arctic waters can be quite dim, it is possible that they can ambush sleeping and resting seals or maybe pick up seals that are already injured or trapped by ice. Greenland sharks live in the North Atlantic and Arctic waters around Greenland, Canada, and Iceland, and have evolved certain features that help them cope with the cold. High concentrations of chemicals in their bodies act as an antifreeze, which has the side effect of making their flesh poisonous. Next. But much about this elusive animal remains unknown. For such a large shark with a broad that is not really rare species throughout most of its range, it is amazing how little we know about, says Brian Devine, a marine biologist and Arctic fisheries scientist at Oceans North, a conservation NGO who was not involved in necropsy. Even basic aspects of their biology and ecology are unknown, she says. For example, we still do not know where their mating and pupping grounds are, and only one pregnant female has ever been observed, so we don't even know for certain how many pups they have per pregnancy or how often they reproduce. Next. As a result of this uncertainty, scientists aren't able to accurately estimate how many Greenland sharks there are in the world, she says. This makes it harder to assess population health and their risks from threats like fishing bycatch. Next. It is difficult to protect species effectively if you aren't sure what areas or habitats are most important for them. For key behaviors like mating and pupping, as well as not knowing how often they reproduce or how many pups they have, Divine says. There are lots of big mysteries that still need to be solved beyond how they live so long. It was the first stranding of a Greenland shark in Ireland, which does, however, get many other strandings, Deluge says, due to the way by storms that can sweep animals. Next. It would have been old by our time scale, but it was maybe 150, maybe 200 years old if we are stretching it. So, for a Greenland shark, it's just reached maturity, says Deluge. Deluge and the other researchers examine the shark for potential wounds or cuts that could from fishing nets, for example, but found no signs of damage. They then carefully skinned the shark. The skin covered in sharp little hooks called denticles is currently stored in a freezer and ready for taxidermy. Next, the National Museum of Ireland hopes to eventually display the specimen. This would allow future visitors to learn about one of the world's most mysterious sharks. Species and the scientific work needed to study such creatures, says Ami Geraghty, curator of zoology at the National Museum of Ireland Natural History. In short, we have to learn and share as much as possible from this unusual standing. Next. The researchers then placed open the shark, revealing its massive liver, weighing 50 kg, which they carefully guided out into a large steel basin to examine it. Everything was examined, measured, and weighed, with samples taken as we went, says D. Luz. Another step crucial step was to remove the eyes. Another crucial step was to remove the eyes. The lenses will be used for radiocarbon dating, which will help find out the shark's age. Greenland sharks' eyes are another source of mystery. Next. For a long time, Greenland sharks have been described as having very poor vision or even being blind, says Fogg. This is because of their extremely long lifespan and little tassel-like parasites that hook onto the front of their eyes. Next. However, a 2026 research paper by Fogg and others has found the opposite. Their eyes' retinas are actually intact and highly specialized for life in very dim light, explains Fogg, who was not involved in the iris stranding case. Even in individuals over a century old, the cells and molecular machinery needed for vision are still there and still look healthy. Needed for vision are still there and still look healthy. Their visual camera, called depths of Arctic oceans, it explains. What is really remarkable is that this complex tissue appears to keep working for so long. It's a visual system that seems built to last for centuries. The dangling parasites don't actually have much of an effect of the shark's vision, she says, according to the research. Next, this resilience is in contrast to humans. Visual systems, he says, human eyesight tends to decline with age. Human eyesight tends to decline with age. While in Greenland shark, we saw that vision can remain intact for over a century. This is quite astonishing, wondering, as it suggests that they may have evolved mechanisms to resist or delay this kind of age related degeneration, says Fogg. One reason for the resilience may lie in the Greenland shark's ability to repair damaged DNA. She suggests her team found genes involved in DNA repair that were especially active or turn on in the Greenland shark compared to other sharks that don't live for as long. This is especially interesting because DNA damage and repair capacity are widely linked to aging process across animals, she says. Next. A sample of muscle tissue will be sent to a lab for a different experimental method to establish a Greenland shark's age. Based the protective caps on the ends of DNA sequences, says Stanov Jeremelin. Along with exposure to environmental stresses, we opened the chest to reach the heart of the animal, says Deluge. The heart seemed healthy, she says, and was huge, weighing 34 kg. It was gigantic. It was gigantic because it's a gigantic shark. For comparison, a human heart weighs around 300 gram. Next, how can a heart beat on 4 centuries? A recent study examining Greenland sharks' hearts found they showed common signs of aging, such as scarring. However, despite these markers, the heart seemed well functioning. The findings suggest that the Greenland shark has evolved to be resilient to markers of aging that are associated with poor heart health in other animals, including humans. This highly unusual finding, the heart continuing to function, resilience as a key mechanism enabling extreme longevity, the paper's authors say. Next, for Stevno Jeremalem, the post-mortem offered a chance to take a close look at some of the Greenland shark's unique features, which have evolved to perfectly suit its needs, such as feeding on carcasses on the seabed. It eats it, even when it's rotten. No matter its stage, it takes that opportunity to eat, she says. Next, the dead shark in the lab had the perfect tools for that job. Its teeth were so adapted for ripping off chunks of carcasses because of its straight, very sharp upper teeth. And the bottom teeth had two different directions, almost like a saw. That's a perfect adaptation for biting off chunks of carcasses it finds on the seabed. Next, the stomach and entire digestive tract were removed intact. They were removed intact for later analysis. Filling the closed stomach, and the researchers noticed that it seemed empty, but the spiral valve, a part of the intestine, seemed full. The empty stomach may not have been a problem for the shark, which has low energetic needs. Their low metabolism may have evolved to cope with resource scarce environments like the Arctic with highly seasonal prey. Testicles was twisted, and the splin's color looked unusual. D. Lewis says, but overall the shark seemed healthy. It's possible that the shark was sick in a way that wasn't obvious, she suggests, and the analysis of the organs and samples may eventually reveal more about the cause of its death. It makes you wonder what happened. D. Lewis says it's sad because it is old by our standards, but it really had much of its life ahead. CJP protest. The youth didn't see it began with a fear that determine their future cannot be trusted. What can? Next, weeks later, on Monday, tens of thousands of young men and women tried to march on India's parliament and button charges. Thousands more have returned to the streets in the day, a youth-led movement over repeated examination papers demanding education reforms. Indra Pradhan. At its center is activist Sonam Wangchuk, who says he lost 11 kg during a movement. He ended his fast late on Thursday. But student leaders say the protest will continue. Next, student protest or the beginning of the something larger. History offers reasons for both caution and optimism. Student movements have periodically transformed Indian politics. The new, sorry, the Nav Nirman agitation in Gujarat helped trigger veteran socialist leader Jay Prakash Narayan's movement against former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi in the 1970s. Others have erupted dramatically. before fading away. What makes the CJP unusual, however, is not simply its scale but the nature and breadth of its grievance. Grievance means complaint. Unlike many of the biggest protests against Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government over the past decade, whether over citizenship, farm laws, and or other contentious policies, this movement is not fundamentally about ideology, nor is it rooted in the interest of a single community or social group. Instead, it questions whether the state can still guarantee fairness in the examination system that millions of young Indians see as their principal route to social mobility. The exam and education system cuts across caste, class, and gender to quite a large degree. Yamini Iyer, senior visiting fellow at Brown University, told the BBC the core constituency coming to this protest doesn't represent a singular interest group. The break distinctive, this movement centers on administrative failure. Rahul Verma, a fellow at the Center for Policy Research, a Delhi based think tank, told the BBC the state's inability to conduct examinations fairly and prevent paper leaks makes it very different kind of political challenge to the BJP. The differences, he argues, changes the politics. Unlike earlier protests rooted in ideology or policy, this one questions the BJP's ability strategy, Burma says. Next. Many of those protesting, he adds, are not natural opponents of the BJP. They are aspirational young Indians and their parents who see these exams as a path to upward mobility. Because the grievance is about governance rather than ideology, he argues the BJP cannot easily rally its supporters or deploy the political counter narratives that helped it confront earlier protest movements. Monday's demonstrations appear to reinforce that assessment. For the past 2 weeks, comparisons with the anti-corruption movement of 2011 had largely centered on the CJP's impressive online reach. While skeptics questioned momentum, whether digital momentum could spill onto the streets, Monday's turnout suggested it could. Joyajit Pal, a professor at the University of Michigan who studies technology and society, says social media has become a tinderbox waiting to explode with the next thing. Its speed and reach driven by emotion, long simmering frustration over the state's lack of accountability created the conditions for this implosion, he told the BBC, adding that the architectures of social media make such eruptions likely to recur. The question now is whether that online search has become something more enduring. I think Monday's gathering indicates this moment may have crossed a tipping point, Burma says. Whether it grows from here, he adds, will depend largely on how the government responds. For Air, Monday's protest revealed something equally significant. Student unions, left groups, and organizations such as the WIM Army, a Dalit rights group, were present, but they were ultimately outnumbered by an organic outpouring of students from all over the country. That's unique compared to any significant protest in India's recent histories, she says. Just as significantly, Air believes the movement has already outgrown the organization that sparked it and Wangchuk's hunger strike. The catalyst may have been the CJP, she says, but it became bigger than them. Students came not only because of the state's handling of the protest, she argues, but because they wanted a space and a site to express the deep frustration they had been carrying for some time. The memes, posters, and slogans suggested grievance extending well beyond exam paper leaks. After initially leaving the response to ministers and party spokes stepped in on Wednesday. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh accused the opposition of using students as a political tool while insisting the government remain committed to addressing their concerns. Through Parliament, Modi addressed the issue publicly for the first time than the welfare and future of our youth. He wrote on X announcing fast track courts to ensure swift for those involved in paper leaks. Those who try to harm the future of our youth will not be. Next, whether those assurances will be enough to diffuse the into broader anxieties over a slowing economy, scarce job, and a deafening sense that the future offers diminishing opportunities. Lack of hope about exhaustions with a government that has been in power for a long time. Its failure to deliver on that promises it built its reputation on may have reached a tipping point. For her, the protests are about far more than a single policy failure. Next. The message from protester is clear. We are exhausted. We need a new kind of politics, a new political grammar, one rooted in ideas and focused on governance and delivery. Whether that frustration can be sustained as a political movement, however, is another question. Political scientist Suhas Palsikar argues the cockroach movement may simply provide an outlet for public anger before gradually losing steam, much like the farmers' protest. Where will the cockroach movement go? Perhaps nowhere. It will allow venting of frustration and taper off, he wrote on X. He also cautioned against romanticizing it as a Gen Z uprising. It would be a mistake to imagine a youth movement for or a Gen Z movement. These are only convenient myth for commentators. The movement's ideological and political character is currently fluid. He argues with different political forces likely to seek influence over it. What the protesters have undeniably shown, he says, is a willingness to confront the state. The young have shown their angst and their disgust. They have governments, brutal policy, brutal police. They have also shown that only street action makes this regime listen and talk. Whether that energy can endure, Palsikar argues, will depend on many factors, including state repression, media larger than examination paper leaks. The current protest and the spontaneous response it has evoked is indicative of widespread discontent of young people and students about the state of affairs in the country and in the education system, which goes beyond the specific paper leak issue. He told the BBC, compared with earlier student mobilizations, he argues the current movement appears broader and younger in scale. Majumdar also ideological, like the farmers' movement before them. He says they show that the democratic spirit is still alive in Indian society. For Yair, the democratic impulse is already reshaping politics. People are seeking accountability for governance in sites that are non-electoral, Ayer says. The split between electoral legitimacy and democratic accountability outside electoral space is the new phenomenon of politics in India. Whether that a party's protest or merely a passing moment of public anger will become clear only with time.